On Monday, the 18th of November 2024, Aaron Kenny of Ashton Old Road in Manchester was sentenced at Minshall Street Crown Court to 11 years in prison after a lengthy investigation. The court heard how Mr. Kenny used threats of violence to get children to do his dealing, which was highlighted in the investigation, Operation Charger, running from 2019 until 2021. Operation Charger focused on the supply of Class A and Class B drugs within the Tameside area. This included the Sam and Macro or S&M line, which was run by Mr. Kenny. He coordinated the drug supply, cultivation of cannabis, and movement of drugs from place to place. He also used children to assist in the supply of drugs, including holding drugs, the drug line mobile phone, and collecting the money. Mr. Kenny, who was originally arrested in 2021 before briefly disappearing, was apprehended in December of the same year. He was found living in an apartment in the city centre and was relying on a driver to take him out to do drug deals as he had 2 broken legs. A warrant was carried out and a large amount of Class A drugs as well as cash was seized. Sergeant Matthew Elliott of the Child Exploitation Team in Tameside said, "Using violence or fear of violence to get vulnerable people in our community to do drug deals is bad enough, but to use a child is just unforgivable. As a force, we are committed to protecting the children in our town, and we are hopeful that this result allows the victims to put their experience behind them and allows them to live as the children they are." This was a complex and challenging investigation with lots of moving parts, and I would like to thank members of both Challenger and CCE teams who were committed to achieving justice in this matter. We will continue to work to take drugs off our city streets and prevent children from being coerced into doing something they don't want to do. A total of 8 individuals involved in a harrowing and meticulously planned kidnapping and blackmail operation have been sentenced to significant jail terms following a series of court hearings. The final 3 men, Sean Freeman, Dalroy Chin, and Mika Warfel, were sentenced on Friday, November the 22nd, 2024 at Manchester Crown Court, marking the conclusion of a lengthy investigation by law enforcement. Sean Freeman of Ross Hill Walk, Manchester, received 9 years in prison. Dalroy Chin of Woodstock, Billing Road, Northampton, was sentenced to 11 years. Mika Warfel of Penn Court, Northampton, was handed a sentence of 11 years and 3 months. Mr. Warfel had fled the UK following the kidnapping, but was eventually tracked down in Spain and brought to justice. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to kidnap, an earlier court appearance, while Mr. Freeman and Mr. Chin were convicted following a trial at Manchester Crown Court in April 2024. Earlier, on January the 10th, 2020, 5 other members of the gang received significant prison terms. Nicky Barnes of Greenwood Road, Northampton, was sentenced to 12 years for conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail. Daniel Lau of Byfield Road, Northampton, was sentenced to 10 years and 6 months for the same charges. Michael Etu of Left Bank, Manchester, was sentenced to 10 years and 2 months. Ben Onakabu of Windy Ridge, Northampton, was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months. An unnamed 35-year-old man was also sentenced to conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to blackmail and has since been released from prison. On Thursday, the 11th of April 2019, a man in his 30s was a victim to a terrifying kidnap in Manchester. The victim was approached by 3 individuals dressed as police officers who falsely arrested him and forced him into the back of a black Audi vehicle with fake license plates. The group transported the victim to back streets in Gorton, where he was violently dragged out of the car, hooded, and held at gunpoint with what appeared to be a firearm. He was then transferred into a van and taken to a lockup, where he endured over 13 hours of brutal torture and threats. The gang used horrifying methods to coerce the victim into complying with their demands. They brandished an imitation firearm, heightening the victim's terror. The victim was tortured with tools, including a blowtorch and a taser. The group demanded a ransom from the victim's family, which was eventually instructed to be delivered to an address in Birmingham. Investigators uncovered that the group had extensively planned the kidnapping in the weeks leading up to the incident. Dalroy Chin placed a tracker under the victim's vehicle to monitor his movements. Sean Freeman, who had a close relationship with the victim through football, lured him to Parswood Centre under false pretenses. Mr. Freeman had also recorded the victim's vehicle registration and details of his family members on his mobile phone. The lockup where the victim was held was sourced sourced by Mr. Freeman, and he participated in the reconnaissance with the team, visiting a pub in Alderley Edge to prepare for the ransom drop-off location. DNA from Mr. Chin was discovered on a balaclava found in a kit bag in the black Audi used during the kidnapping. Police recovered handcuffs and an additional tracker from Mr. Chin's residence during the search. The Audi, along with the other tools used in the crime, was found in the lockup during the police raid. While most of the gang members were arrested within a couple of weeks of the incidents, Mika Warfel fled the UK after an international search. He was eventually located and apprehended in Spain. Detective Sergeant Mark Evans of the Major Incident Team expressed satisfaction with the convictions. This was a lengthy investigation, and I am pleased that today we have concluded proceedings by locking up the final 3 members involved in this plot. Mr. Freeman, who was a friend of the victim, betrayed that trust in the most devastating way by luring him into this trap and facilitating the logistics of this crime. The victim and his family have endured unimaginable trauma, and we hope these sentences provide them with some sort of degree of closure. I would also like to thank the victim and his family for their patience and assistance throughout this investigation. This case highlights the calculated and premeditated nature of organised crime and the dedication of police to bring offenders to justice. Even when they attempt to flee across international borders, the victim and their family can now begin to move forward, knowing that the individuals responsible are behind bars. Operation Avro hit the City of Manchester district on Thursday, the 21st of November 2024. Warrants took place in Openshaw, Moston and Wivenshaw, with drugs, weapons and large quantities of cash recovered. Officers made a total of 62 arrests for a range of offences including drug supply, possession of offensive weapons and robbery as part of Operation Avro, the monthly GMP initiative that sees officers take the fight back to criminals, providing high visibility patrols and engaging with the community. A vast quantity of stolen goods was seized from several properties, including a £20,000 Class A drug seizure at a warrant on Potato Wharf, stolen goods recovered at Whitecliff Close, and 54 electric bikes seized in the city centre. In partnership with Trading Standards, a premises was visited in Gorton, where £1,500 worth of illegal vapes and cigarettes were seized. The operation also saw officers identify 219 traffic offences being committed. In total, 23 vehicles were seized and 2 traffic-related arrests were made. High visibility patrols took place in the city centre, with patrols supporting a woman who used the Ask for Angela process at a bar in the city. Officers also engaged in prevention activity, with drug talks delivered by school engagement officers at local schools, weapons suites and outreach work with partners. City of Manchester officers worked closely with local councillors throughout the day. This included councillors attending the police briefing and several councillors accompanying officers to observe ongoing OP Avro activity and conducting walkarounds in their local area, with senior officers to highlight local issues that concern communities. Chief Superintendent David Meany, District Commander for the City of Manchester, said, "Operation Avro is an opportunity for more officers to be visible on patrol across Manchester. This activity was based around issues that have been fed back from our communities, such as drug dealing and serious violence. Our resources were deployed across the whole district, and we were really grateful for the feedback we received from members of the public throughout the day. Operation Avro is a force-wide initiative that delivers extra resources and specialist officers to a different district within Greater Manchester each month, and launched in Salford in October 2021. Since then, it travelled around the force, with the operation targeting crimes and concerns that members of the public in the district have told GMP give them the most concern." A long-standing investigation by Greater Manchester Police's Serious Organised Crime Group into drugs trafficking has come to an end after 3 years, with Greater Manchester Police securing prison sentences totalling 203 years and 2 months. The final man embroiled in the multi-million-pound drugs conspiracy has been jailed for 16 years. Christopher Paul of Hill Place, Nelson, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Following a retrial which concluded in August 2024, 3 men were found guilty of the drug offences and possession of criminal property. In April 2024, 12 defendants were sentenced following a 14-week trial in 2023, where they were found guilty of conspiracy to supply drugs and possession of criminal property. In the summer of 2022, specialist detectives launched a covert investigation into an organised crime group believed to be in control of a multi-million-pound drugs conspiracy across the northwest. The investigation began when Jonathan Smith and Lewis Cleworth featured in connection with an existing surveillance operation into James Mulligan, who was head of another organised crime group at the time, operating across the region. This investigation, codenamed Operation Bowler, was into Mr. Mulligan and his co-conspirators, and detectives secured jail sentences for 11 men in 2023 for almost 70 years. During Operation Bowler, Lewis Cleworth and James Mulligan were in regular communication with one another, and James Mulligan and David Keenan were witnessed by surveillance meeting Jonathan Smith. In October 2021, when police arrested James Mulligan as part of an original investigation, the following day, Jonathan Smith stopped using his mobile device and stopped activating ANPR automatic number plate recognition cameras in Nelson and Blackpool, clearly feeling the pressure of Greater Manchester Police. To further remove him from potential attention to police, the OCG replaced him with Jacob Smith, who took over his courier role until March 2022. By March 2022, feeling confident that any potential police investigation had now dried up following Mr. Mulligan's arrest, Jonathan Smith confidently came back to work. However, unbeknown to him, the entire criminal group was still under surveillance. 4 months later, detectives had gathered enough evidence to execute a strike and arrest the entire criminal network and bring them in for questioning. The conspiracy involved in this investigation ran between the 1st of December 2021 until the 20th of July 2022, when police executed simultaneous strikes at their addresses. During this period, the group were responsible for the movement of at least 75 kilos of high purity cocaine, which has the estimated street value of £7.5 million. However, the total figure this group were involved with is suspected to exceed this. Lewis Cleworth played a leading role in the OCG, and working beneath him, several individuals played vital roles to ensure the operation ran smoothly, with customers based across Greater Manchester, Lancashire and West Yorkshire. Through months of surveillance, customers and co-conspirators across the region were identified, with clear evidence of multi-kilo transactions occurring. ANPR telephone analysis and surveillance revealed the OCG made an excess of 150 journeys between Middleton and various delivery sites across the region during the conspiracy period, delivering Class A drugs to paying customers. On Thursday, the 5th of May 2022, surveillance officers observed an exchange between Mr. Story and Mr. Haig on Stakehill Lane, Middleton. Mr. Haig was observed back to West Yorkshire, where he was stopped by police on Skull Street in Bradford. In the back of his car, police recovered 2 solid parcels wrapped in brown parcel tape and plastic, bearing a distinct tiger emblem on the packaging. These parcels were later analysed and confirmed to be high purity cocaine. The following day, on Friday the 6th of May, officers attended Mr. Cleworth's address on Hawkshead Drive, where he was arrested. A search of his house revealed over £3,000 in cash, a mobile phone, and keys for a property on Borshaw Clough Way, which police believe was being used as a safe house. Police forced entry to his property on Borshaw Clough Way and found Mr. Kilcourse asleep on the sofa. From this house, police seized approximately 6 kilos of cannabis bush contained in vacuum seal bags, 2 blocks of cocaine wrapped in brown parcel tape with a distinctive tiger emblem on, identical to the packages seized from Mr. Haig the previous day, and drug paraphernalia containing residue of cocaine. Police also recovered brown plastic wrappings from blocks of cocaine discarded in the kitchen. These were almost identical to the wrappings recovered from a different location earlier in the investigation. Following the period of surveillance and after several crucial arrests, police executed 13 simultaneous strikes at properties across Greater Manchester on Wednesday the 27th of July. In total, police seized tens of thousands of pounds in cash, designer clothes, high-value jewelry, and debtor lists from defendants. At Mr. Riley's address in Middleton, police watched as he tried to run out the back of his house in his underwear to evade arrest. He didn't account for police to be waiting in his backyard, so when he saw them, he ran back into his house where he was detained by police. Officers noticed a smell of burning plastic in his house and smoke coming from the toilet bowl. Police recovered 2 mobile phones from the toilet, which had been shattered and snapped in half in an attempt to destroy evidence. Mr. Riley had also several small cuts on his hands as a result of trying to break the phones. Detective Sergeant Mark Rigby from GMP's Serious Organised Crime Group said, "This has been an exhaustive investigation which has resulted in over 200 years in prison sentences. This is a true testament to the years of hard work and dedication by officers across the Serious Crime Division and colleagues at the Crown Prosecution Service who have given us endless hours of their time, insight and expertise through this entire investigation. Drugs trafficking is a major source of revenue for organised crime groups, and it brings a culture of violence and addiction to our communities. Through conducting hundreds of painstaking hours of surveillance, we were able to build this case and bring each and every offender operating in this conspiracy to justice, despite their efforts to evade police. As part of the operation into the conspiracy, which was diligently investigated by detectives, a total of 16 men were jailed. In August 2024, 3 men were found guilty of a number of drug offences and possession of criminal property. Anthony Nichols of Alder Avenue, Bury, was sentenced to 17 years and 6 months for conspiracy to supply Class A and Class B drugs. Waqar Ahmed of Fountain Street, Nelson, was sentenced to 15 years for conspiracy to supply Class A and Class B drugs and possession of criminal property. Matt Haig of Skull Street, Bradford, was jailed for 11 years for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. In April 2024, 12 men were also jailed after being found guilty of conspiracy to supply drugs and possession of criminal property following a trial in 2023. Jonathan Smith of Swinstead Avenue, Manchester, was jailed for 17 years. At trial, he was found to have a top role in the OCG and also found guilty of possession of criminal property. Lewis Cleworth of Hawkshead Drive, Middleton, was jailed for 14 years and 8 months for his leading role in the OCG. He was also found guilty of conspiracy to supply Class B drugs. Jacob Smith of Higher Wood Street, Middleton, was jailed for 10 years and 10 months. He was also found guilty of possession of criminal property. Kyle Salt of Alan Roberts Road, Newton Heath, was jailed for 10 years and 8 months. Reece Story of Newby Drive, Middleton, was jailed for 9 years and 9 months. James Kilcourse of Borshaw Clough Way, Middleton, was jailed for 7 years and 8 months. He was also found guilty of conspiracy to supply Class B drugs. Elliot Riley of Mossway, Middleton, was jailed for 8 years. Marshall Ashley of Skull Street, Bradford, was jailed for 11 years and 3 months. Liam Bottley of Adston Avenue, Blackpool, was jailed for 10 years, 8 months. Bradley Hughes of Rosemary Avenue, Blackpool, was jailed for 13 years. David Ditchfield of Pagden Avenue, Hattersley, was jailed for 15 years and 6 months. And Jordan Wood of Argyle Street, Haywood, was jailed for 14 years and 8 months. Jack Cregan and Colin Brown were sentenced at Manchester Crown Court this week. Colin Brown of Moorcroft Road in Northern Moor pleaded guilty to violent disorder and robbery at an earlier hearing. Mr. Brown was jailed for 2.5 years. On August 3rd, 2024 in Piccadilly Gardens, he was in a group that breached the metal barriers separating different protest groups and was part of the group that attacked a man. Mr. Brown was also shouting at and goading others in the group and the police, trying to provoke fighting. Mr. Brown also pulled a scarf from a victim with force and stole it. James Cregan of Argyle Close, Fellsworth, has been jailed for 2.5 years following an investigation by specialist detectives following recent disorder in Newton Heath, which saw a bus driver assaulted, thousands of pounds worth of criminal damage caused, and emergency service workers attacked. Following a diligent investigation, Mr. Cregan had little choice but to plead guilty to actually bodily harm against the bus driver and violent disorder. On Wednesday the 31st of July, police were called to reports of violent disorder on Oldham Road in Newton Heath, Manchester. During the disorder, a bus driver was assaulted as Mr. Cregan launched a violent and unprovoked attack. When arrested, Mr. Cregan lied, claiming it couldn't possibly be him as he was committing crime in Derbyshire that night. However, extensive phone analysis placed Mr. Cregan on Oldham Road at the time of the disorder. Police also recovered several videos from his phone implicating him. During a search of his house in Fellsworth, police found his phone hidden and sellotaped under a kitchen cabinet. He had mistakenly left the phone on vibrate, so all it took was one phone call to unravel his lies. DCI Jill Billingham said, "GMP are committed to protecting all communities as demonstrated. We are dedicated to employing our resources to seek justice for those subjected to racially motivated crimes. Today, 20 adults have been sentenced for disorder at Newton Heath, resulting in more than 25 years of custodial sentences. We are continuing to investigate, locate and trace those who were involved in this deplorable and unnecessary violence, and we remain focused on keeping communities safe whilst bringing swift justice alongside the Crown Prosecution Service. Your help has seen more than 200 reports of information submitted to us, which has helped us identify 151 suspects. Many of our suspects have been through the court, but we're not done yet. If you recognise any of these people, please get in touch and help ensure those involved are brought to justice." Operation Falcon was launched in May 2022. It is a collaborative effort involving officers from across a number of different specialist teams, ranging from our economic crime unit, serious and organised crime group, specialist operations and intelligence officers, who all work towards removing funds from criminal networks. Since the creation of the operation, officers have clawed back criminal money, which has then been used to fund community initiatives and policing operations that tackle, reduce and prevent crime, ultimately keeping the public safe. Money laundering is a process of turning criminal proceeds into legitimate funds through businesses, bank accounts and even moving the money abroad, and it costs the UK economy billions of pounds a year. Operation Falcon was created to stop cash-based money laundering, in particular the transport of large sums of criminal cash on our roads. The teams involved track and intercept unregistered cash on the move. Over £2 million has been seized since the creation of Operation Falcon in 2022, which has come from a range of policing activities, from proactive operations on our roads to warrant executed at known criminal addresses. Detective Superintendent Joe Harrop, head of GMP's Serious Organised Crime and lead for Operation Falcon, said, "If we stop the right criminals in the right cars, there is a high likelihood that they will be transporting cash. The operation has been successful because we use officers and police staff with different skill sets. We have officers that can develop intelligence and then using our specialist driving capabilities in our tactical vehicle intercept unit, who are utilised to stop criminals in their tracks. The cases are then sent to experts in our asset detention and recovery unit to then prove the money has been acquired by illicit means. We can then ultimately recover that cash in the courts. Money laundering is a factor in every single crime type, and it is a means to generate an income to further their criminality. It is important to recognise that those criminals that are operating at this level and moving large sums of cash are the criminals who are blighting our communities the most, and removing their funds means we are ultimately making Greater Manchester a safer place to work, live and visit. We will continue this momentum by continuing to tackle criminal finance, and if you're operating in Greater Manchester and you're generating money from crime, we will come and get it off you and then reinvest it back into the community.